Phone check. 1, 2. What is this? How are you, my friends, family? We're going to go ahead and begin this live. I'm not going to be before you long. So, you saw the title of what we're talking about today. Bad news for both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Let's get into it. But before we do that, please make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment here on this platform. If you like what we're doing here, we're building it as we fly. We're engaging teams and getting our professionalism up here. Even the thumbnail is an improvement, and we'll be doing that every time we come out here. We're going to try and do this every other night, if not every night, coming to you live until we have some more long form content to share with you in the next couple of weeks. So until then, we'll be just responding in kind to what's happening in the news around us. Again, subscribe, like, and comment here. Go to my other platforms, TikTok, Curious_Formula. We look forward to talking some more about it. We do lives on TikTok every morning, and you got to be there to be square. Same bad time, same bad channel, usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock at the latest. So why is there bad news for Donald Trump and Joe Biden? I know many of you are probably already suspecting why there's bad news for Donald Trump. You're talking about the conviction just happened last week, but you would probably think that that would mean good news and a good thing for Joe Biden's campaign. Not so. If you read Political, we're going to get to that in a second. But why is it bad news for Donald Trump? Obviously, the conviction happened, and that is bad news for his campaign and for his ability to win the presidency in November. Hold on one second. Get rid of this ambient sound that's in here. But obviously, that's a problem for his campaign. We all know that. 5 months out before a general election, it is never a good thing. I do repeat, never a good thing to be convicted of a felony. But what is becoming more of a problem for Donald Trump is the aftermath, at least the immediate aftermath of what the conviction has meant to the campaign. As you know, Trump land, MAGA land, Republican land has moved around the former president in ways that we have not seen before. They've tightened the ranks. Immediately after the conviction came down, the RNC executive team called all 50 state chairs to go over strategy. And what has seemingly come out of that strategy session has been a united party, no sunlight in between the people standing shoulder to shoulder behind this president and saying that this was a travesty, weaponization of the judicial system, all the things that that Donald Trump has been saying on his own and surrogates have been saying for weeks. They just doubled down on that. But interestingly enough, Axios came out on Friday with a morning consult poll. As many of you know, I'm not really big into polls. I think people put too much stake in them. They put too much, belief in them. They are a snapshot in time. They are an indication of trends as they move forward. They're not to be believed in terms of giving you a totality of the circumstances of the race and each particular combatant's position in it. It is a snapshot. It is a measurement of time, and it is an indication ever so small of where the race may be going, give you some ideas. And I'm not really a big fan of the morning consult poll. If it had been Reuters or Harris or something like that, I'd have been like, that's a traditional pollster that we can trust in terms of their results and their accuracy and sort of, time tested and pinpoint their ability to really gauge what Americans want. But it's the only one we have. It was the first one out of the gate, so we're going to go with it. Axios reported as their headline, 49% of independents think that Trump should drop out post-guilty verdict. Conducted on Friday, These are the other things that stand out to me for our discussion here today. 54% of registered voters, that's all registered voters, strongly or somewhat approve of the guilty verdict compared to 34% who strongly or somewhat disapprove. And that's a big number. You know, what the Donald Trump and MAGA world was trying to inform us was that, you know, this was going to lead to incredible violence, that the country was somehow split down the middle. And what this poll, at least initially shows, and I do caution you, this is initially, that 54% of all registered voters somewhat or strongly approve of the guilty verdict, meaning that there are people out here in the average world of independents and Democrats and Republicans on some level who strongly believe that the guilty verdict was fair. They approve of it. They support it. They don't have a problem with it and don't see it as a miscarriage of justice. Interestingly enough, the other point I want to bring out is 49% of independents and 15%, get this now, 15% of Republicans said Donald Trump should end his campaign because of the conviction. Folks, that blows my mind, and it should blow yours, because now we're talking about hard numbers. And the poll go on to say that their quick and fast poll of who Americans support, Biden had 45% nationally again, and Trump had 44%. That's within the margin of error. That is still very much a tied race, give or take, for the margin of error. But the fact that 49%, that's almost half of independents, and 15% of Republicans said Trump should end his campaign. These are not people saying they're not going to vote for him. No. They're going further. They're saying these people are saying they want him to leave the race, that he should not be running as a convicted felon. Now, why is that important? And I'll talk about the third thing that I think might be good news, but a flip side of that for Donald Trump as well. So the reason why this is more devastating than the 54% of registered voters who believe that, you know, approve of the guilty verdict is, and this feeds into some of the content we've been talking about here personally, 50% of independents believe he should drop out of the race. And we've talked here many times about Donald Trump needing independents to win in November. I know mainstream media, I know MSNBC, I know CNN, I know Fox Entertainment, I know Newsmax, I know News Nation have not told you this because they want to keep you in the midst of having the combatants tied, and we don't know who's going to win. It's back and forth, and we don't know what's going to turn this election. They obviously do. They're just not telling you because they want clicks and views and likes to make sure that they can sustain their campaign budget every day to keep you on the edge of your seat. I've told you before, you can mark my words on this, I'm not wrong about these things. Both men have two mountains to climb. Joe Biden has his mountain that he must climb in order to win in November. If he can't climb that mountain, he loses. Donald Trump has a mountain he has to climb by November if he wants to win. And if he doesn't climb that mountain, he loses. With Biden, it's turnout. And with Donald Trump, it's independence. Why are independents so important to Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump does not win the presidency in 2016 against Hillary Clinton if he does not win independence. It's the only time Donald Trump has won independence. And winning independence in 2016 is how he narrowly beat Hillary Clinton in a number of those battleground states that turned the election and gave him 270, right? Proof or positive of this is that Donald Trump has not won independence since 2016. So in 2018, Republicans, massive losses in the midterm. Why? Because Republicans did not win independence. 2020 election happens. Donald Trump loses the presidency because of election fraud? No, because he did not win independence. 2022, the red wave was predicted that piddled into a bit of a drizzling, malfunctioning river, tributary, puddle, if you will, because Republicans did not win the independent vote. And before the trial and before the conviction, Joe Biden was ahead of Donald Trump by 14 percentage points with independents. I repeat, And you heard it here first, and you'll hear it echoed later in this campaign season. Donald Trump cannot win in November without independence. And if he doesn't win independence, he does not win in November. And so these numbers of 49%, half, let's just say 50%, let's round it up. 50% of independents say that Donald Trump should end his campaign because of his conviction. Folks, if DEFCON 5 is the top in terms of security and DEFCON 1 is what we are facing, nuclear annihilation, Donald Trump, those numbers right here, if they don't change, should represent at least DEFCON 3, maybe even 2 for the Trump campaign. And his people have got to know that. The more troubling sign of even that for Donald Trump is that 15% of Republicans, 15% of Republicans said that he should also end this campaign because of the conviction. Now, why should the 15 number not surprise those of you who watch the content here? It's because for weeks now, we have been talking about the softening of Donald Trump's support within the Republican Party that we've seen and witnessed because of the results that are happening in the Republican primaries and the vote that has been coming out for others who are not even running for president anymore in the Republican primary system. Donald Trump is a presumptive nominee that are still getting votes. We talked to you about the fact that even though Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee, nobody else is running. He's secured enough delegates, clinched enough delegates to be the nominee. This is a time when the party should be just going through the motions. Joe Biden going through the motions on the Democratic side as the presumptive nominee of the Democrats. Donald Trump should be just going through the motions here as we wind up. Today might be the last day of primaries, if I'm not mistaken, across the land. Shout out to New Jersey. He should be getting 95% of the vote, 98% of the vote. But Donald Trump, a few weeks ago in Indiana, lost 20% of the vote in the primaries to Nikki Haley. Name on the ballot, hasn't been running for president since February. 20%. We go to Maryland just about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago maybe. 20% of the vote going to Nikki Haley. Name on the ballot, hasn't been running since February. In other states, there's been a combination of Nikki Haley's name on the ballot, Ron DeSantis' name on the ballot, Chris Christie's name on the ballot, Vivek Ramaswamy's name on the ballot, all the above, but combined, they're getting 10, 12, 15, 17, 20%, 22% of the vote. These are people in the Republican primary, Republicans who are not voting for Donald Trump, the presumptive nominee, and nobody else is campaigning. Yet these Republican voters felt the need to vote for somebody other than their presumptive nominee. Who are these people? They're the people we've been talking about for weeks here who've been starting to have buyer's remorse about Donald Trump. And they are the Ronald Reagan conservative mainstream Republicans. Yes, if you look at my content here, that's why you got to subscribe and comment and like these videos. I have 2 videos here in long form that talk about the war that is happening within the Republican Party that people are giving short shrift to. There is a war between the MAGA Republicans, that populist army that is coming to the party, that is largely there because of the cult of personality that is Donald Trump. They are short on ideology, short on specific issues, long on following Donald Trump, long on distrust of institutions, long on believing there's a deep state out there, long on believing that Donald Trump is the repositor for their grievances against society, against their status in life. And they come from a whole host of different ways of living, whole host of socioeconomic communities. And these are the people who feel dispossessed, who feel like society is leaving them, that feel like they don't have a place in this country anymore. And they've rallied and put all their hopes and dreams and grievances with Donald Trump. So it doesn't matter where he stands specifically on the issues. It doesn't matter what he does. Donald Trump was right in characterizing himself in 2016 that he could literally murder somebody on Fifth Avenue and his supporters would not care. He is this, besides the point. He is the point. And a vote for him is a vote against all of the grievances, all the problems that these people have with just about everything in society, right? It's that wing of the party versus the wing of the party that is philosophically, policy-wise, economically, foreign policy wise, has used the model and the philosophy of Ronald Reagan to run the modern day Republican Party from 1980 to 2016 when Trump wins the nomination and wins the presidency. That has been the governing philosophy. And the fight you see in Congress, most importantly in the House, between the far right, the Freedom Caucus, and the mainstream Republicans has been the war of the roses, has been the war of civil wars, has been the defining problem of getting anything passed in Washington. And that war is demonstrating itself in the primaries, right? And so that 15% who don't want Trump to run because of the conviction is part of that 20% who's been voting consistently against him in these primaries. It is the regret. It is the buyer's remorse of the Ronald Reagan conservative mainstream Republicans showing its head. When Nikki Haley comes out and endorses Donald Trump, she says specifically, I hope he reaches out to my supporters. Why? Because he's bleeding those supporters. And so Donald Trump now not only has a mountain to climb in terms of winning independence, he now has the mountain to climb, at least a small mountain, of trying to get the base of his own party back together to support him going forward. And so that's why those numbers are distressing. Now, I have ideas about how he plans on dealing with them and dealing with that problem, at least in the short term. But let me get to the third piece here in terms of some good news for Donald Trump that has a flip side of not being so good. 77% of GOP voters and 43% of independents said they believe the conviction was driven by a motivation to damage Trump's political career. That did come out. That's the majority of the GOP base. Congratulations to former President Trump. And 43% of independents said they believe that the conviction was driven by motivation to damage Trump's political career. That's at least half, close to half. I'm going to round up for that one too. That's at least half of the electorate who feels like some of this stuff was motivated. And they may provide a window of independence that may actually listen to a Donald Trump in the future, right? But if you believe those numbers, let's flip those numbers around on the right side up. That also means that 23% of the GOP, there's that 15 to 20% again, and 57% of independents, that's a bigger majority. That's the same number, if you will, of registered voters who strongly and somewhat approve of the guilty verdict. So now we're kind of split here, right? That do not believe the conviction was driven by motivation to damage Trump's political career. That is, again, bad numbers for the GOP, bad numbers for the independents. So what is Donald Trump going to do in the short term to try and stop the hemorrhaging, to stop the bleeding, to try and rally the troops and rally his base before his poll numbers start dipping and dipping and dipping and dipping? How does he halt the dip? The first thing is I think he does is I think he is going to name a traditional Ronald Reagan mainstream conservative Republican to be his vice president nominee. I think that means that people like Tim Scott, Senator Marco Rubio, others, there's probably half a dozen others who probably fit that mainstream Ronald Reagan conservative Republican persona and can fill the suit, if you will, male and female, that I think he now has to put on his ticket. He's got to put somebody on that those mainstream Republicans will get back on board with his coalition. If they ever get back on at all, putting someone like a Tim Scott, I'm just using that as an example. I like Tim Scott, who can raise money from traditional Republican donors. So that kind of calms down the donor base, the fundraising base, somebody who will get the acclaim of all of his colleagues in the Senate and then in the House, probably from MAGA world and traditional conservative Republican world to unite behind him. He's an African American. He is the sponsor of the First Step Criminal Justice Reform Act. He's the sponsor of the Opportunity Zones Act, right? He is from the South. He is, I think, sets up a good juxtaposition between, in terms of having a conversation about the direction and political direction of the African American community. He's somebody that is a school choice person, another issue that's popular with the base of the Democratic Party that the Democratic Party doesn't seemingly understand is the base that the base supports in their party. He can make it will really shake up establishment Republicanism, maybe even get some independents to start taking a second look at him as well. So it'll be a candidate like him, Marco Rubio, Latino from the state of Florida, to lock up that state in terms of electoral college. Democrats want to play in Florida a little bit. He's somebody who was an enemy, but has become a friend and a supporter of Donald Trump. Again, something that independents may be interested in, somebody that the base of the Republican Party, the mainstream base of the Republican Party would rally around as well. So look for that to happen in the short term. And I think the other thing is that I think, Donald Trump in some kind of way is going to have to calm himself down and show that he is presidential in the June 27th debate that is yet to come, because that's really going to be where this campaign starts. And that's really going to be where this bad news, if it's going to change for both candidates or either candidate, the bad news is going to have to start changing on June 27th if we can wait that long. So now, wait a minute, Biden people, you're not off the hook yet. Don't think I left you alone. Don't think I forgot about you. I see you popping your collars. I see you doing this. I see you popping the bottles, right? You're not out of the woods yet either. In a Politico article that came out on the 28th of May, the headline in the Politico article says, Dems in full-blown freakout over Biden. A pervasive sense of fear has settled in at the highest levels of the Democratic Party over President Joe Biden's re-election prospects, even among office holders and strategists who have previously expressed confidence about the coming battle with Donald Trump. All year, Democrats had been on a joyless and exhausting grind through the 2024 election, but now, nearly 5 months from the election, anxiety has morphed into palpable trepidation, according to more than a dozen party leaders and operatives. And the gap between what Democrats will say on TV or in print and what they'll text their friends has only grown as worries have surged about Biden's prospects. Folks, I've kind of started talking about these alarm bells a few months ago that as a Democrat, I knew people were saying quietly and not saying out loud. And understanding something in the Beltway here in Washington, D.C., there's really two qualms of thought here. There are people who will smile and say, I love Donald Trump. And then behind the scenes, public go, geez, that guy is not equipped to deal with what needs to happen here. He doesn't have the intellect. He doesn't have the capability. Oh, my gosh, what are we doing? But we got to go along with it. On the flip side, you have Democrats who will say Joe Biden's the man. And then they go, oh, my gosh, he's so old. He sounds like he's old. He's got the temper and the voice is gone. Yeah. Can he really take on another debate? Oh, gosh, is there going to be a debate with he and Trump? Trump's going to scream and holler, and he's going to get confused. And, oh, man, there goes our ability to win. These are the things that people privately are saying that you don't get to hear on any of the major news platforms and news services, these 24-hour cable companies. You don't hear those kind of things. But those are the things that people are saying in both parties about their candidates, right? I've been telling you a long time that there is a general sense that we are with Joe Biden because Joe Biden is the only one who can mount a national campaign with a chance to beat Donald Trump. There's nobody else, no matter how popular they may be with the base, how popular they may be with operatives in the Democratic Party, there is nobody that brings all the sides together. There's nobody with the record that Joe Biden has. There is nobody with the record that Kamala Harris has. There is nobody else out there to run for president and vice president that can salvage this ticket and salvage the country in terms of the Democratic message, right? And so, but there is real alarm. There is real fear. There is probable fear. And some of the reasons are that the article points out is the Gaza-Israeli conflict. There is real fear that millennials and younger people are going to stay at home as a protest. You're seeing some of that in the primary vote. As I talked about Donald Trump's primary vote, well, the none of the above, the uncommitted vote, blocks are happening across this country, and they're getting significant numbers too, which is again a barometer of where the party is in terms of their feeling about Joe Biden. They're fearful that that turnout doesn't come. Now, I told you that the mountain that Joe Biden has to climb is that about turnout. That's the reason why this freak out is so scary for the Biden campaign. And while it might not be DEFCON 3 or 2 like it is for the Trump campaign, Biden is definitely on DEFCON 4 because of these alerts and these issues that don't seemingly not going away and are stopping him from moving up. So it's the Gaza conflict and the inability to get a ceasefire, the inability to get folks home who are hostages. Obviously, inflation. I was talking to someone on my TikTok early this morning, and they were saying, I was saying, look, my own bills in terms of food for my family has gone up $300 a month. These are expensive times. People are feeling it everywhere they go. They can't say people are credit card using to get through the week, to get through the month, to pay for groceries. And there's a general malaise, right? It feels, I was a child then, but it feels like 1980 again, right? Where no matter what you looked at Jimmy Carter did, he never got the blame. He never got the credit for it because people were just sick to death of the hostages being in Iran. And they were sick to death about the recession that we were going into. And while we're not in a recession, it just feels like it. That while we can trumpet and try and push and celebrate all the jobs that are being created and all the Dow activity that is Wall Street, that is making our IRAs and 401ks and 403bs like start to really gain some traction in dollars after a moribund time during COVID. Inflation is crushing the average American family. And they don't want to hear that even though inflation is high here, that it's higher in other countries, other industrialized countries. I know that Americans' inflation, as high as it is still better than the inflation that's elsewhere around the world. Nobody wants to hear that here. Someone told me that directly in TikTok. They said, I don't live in Germany or Belgium or France or Japan or any place else. I live in America and I'm being affected here. So it's Gaza, it's inflation. Some people point to they don't think that the country likes Kamala Harris. We've talked about that a little bit here, that the polling on Kamala Harris's performance as vice president has been alarmingly low. And Fox Entertainment has not helped in trying to do that and try to make it look like she could not lead the country in the event that a tragedy would occur. They're saying that as a drag on the ticket. And I think they're saying just a drag on the ticket that people don't know what Biden has done. Even though those of us who keep our ears to the ground know policy a lot, know that it is quite an incredible record of achievement, particularly when we look at a divided House and Senate and a very narrow margin of the majority in the Senate and a House that has just been and unable to do just about anything, much less pass an economic plan, a budget, even keeping a speaker, right? So the world does not know that. And it seems that there's no edge and no direction and no sort of 5 points that we could hit hard every single day around the country in this campaign. It also seems that despite the fundraising advantage that he has had over the Trump campaign, Republicans for all these months, there's no bang for the buck. There's no payoff for that. And now it looks like that after the conviction, that Donald Trump is now starting to raise lots of money, $60 million, I think, in the first 72 hours after the conviction, which still puts him like 2-1 behind Joe Biden, but it means he's closing the gap because it was 3-1 a couple of weeks ago. So that's a problem. Now, what does Joe Biden do to, in the short term and the long term, stop that hemorrhaging for him? Because again, if Joe Biden does not get the turnout that he got in 2020, in 2024, he does not win in November. I know this seems pretty simple stuff. You're like, why is MSNBC, why is CNN, why is no one else telling me this except Ron? Why is no one else telling me this except Curious Formula? Why do I have to go to a barely watched live stream or content on a barely watched YouTube channel to get this information. The two mountains that these men have to accomplish and cross, like that's what decides this election. It's independence for Donald Trump. If he doesn't win, he loses. And if Joe Biden does not get the turnout he got in 2020 and 2024, he loses. So what do I think Joe Biden's going to do in the short term and maybe the long term to stop the hemorrhaging? I think the first thing is some of the stuff that you're seeing right now. I think it was brilliant that Joe Biden said he wanted to debate on June 27th, that he wants to get ahead of it. It's the earliest debate for a presidential contest between the Republican and Democratic combatants since the Kennedy-Nixon debates of 1960. We're talking 2 generations, maybe 3 generations, if I'm counting right, that we've not had that, right? I think he wants to take it to the president. I think President Biden wants to take it to President Trump in a way, and he wants to do it soon. He wants to get he wants to show the difference and make it stark and do it early and make his points early. Secondly, I think the things he's doing now, going to the base, the Morehouse speech, speaking to other places that are his base, I think is another thing that he needs to start doing. He already has more ground game, more teams in the field than Donald Trump has. I think look for that to continue to beef up and to bolster. But here's the other thing that I think will happen that only anybody, I know, no one else is talking about. And this is something that was hinted on if you watch the Joe Biden interview with Howard Stern. Shout out to the Howard Stern fans out there, Baba Booey. It was a brilliant personal interview, but something that came out of that I think a lot of people missed unless you were watching it for the political stuff like I was. Howard Stern says to him, I can't believe Republicans are all sitting on the sidelines or all going to be supporting Donald Trump. I mean, where's the Bushes? Where are the sensible Republicans coming out saying we can't vote for this guy? We got to vote for Joe Biden. And Joe Biden said very quietly, just wait. Just wait. And then they went on to something else. And I took that and I filed that and I kept that in the back because you know what I've been saying on this platform and you know what I've been saying in other platforms where we talk about this stuff. I've said it and you heard it here first when you start hearing about other places. You ready? You got your ears open? Come close. There will be an organized, well-funded, targeted effort by these Ronald Reagan mainstream conservative Republicans to go after Donald Trump on the margins in battleground states and in battleground districts to talk to other Republicans to soften up their support for Donald Trump, and by the smallest of margins, help deliver the states that Joe Biden needs, the battleground states that he needs to win this election. Who are going to be part of this brigade of mainstream conservative Republicans? I'll tell you who they are. You already know some of them. It's the Never Trumpers, right? Chris Christie's of the world, the Christine Todd Whitmans of the world, the Liz Cheney's, Adam Kinzinger, right? All the ones who voted for Mitt Romney, all the ones who voted for impeachment twice, all the ones who voted in the House to reprimand him, right? All the ones who've been part of this cabal for years, that's the first group. Then there's another level. It's all the conservative mainstream Republican former members of Congress who left Congress rather than serve under President Trump. These are the people who were committee chairs, ranking members, subcommittee chairs, subcommittee ranking members. These are people who left Congress in 2018 rather than run under the banner of Trump, who left Congress in 2020 rather than run under the banner of Trump, who left Congress in 2022 rather than run under the banner of Trump, who left Congress in 2024 rather than run under the banner of Donald Trump. Heck, Kim Buck left with 2 weeks notice, said, I'm out of here. This is the dysfunctional party, a dysfunctional Congress. Not saying Kim Buck is going to be one of those guys, but those are the profiles of who else is going to be part of. That's the next level of folks who are going to be talking to Republicans. Who's the last level? Who's the next group of Republicans? All the Republicans who worked in the first Trump administration who now say that he is not fit to serve. I'm talking about the John Boltons of the world. Yeah, I'm talking about the General Mattises of the world. I'm talking about 2 former chiefs of staff, including Kelly, And we all know what Mr. Barr is going to do. He's going back to support the president. But there were dozens of Trump-appointed, Trump-handpicked people in the cabinet and in other places. Margaret Cho, right? Not Margaret Cho. That's it, Margaret Cho. Oh my gosh, Mitch McConnell's wife. People who have left the administration and basically for the last few years have been talking about how inept and unqualified Donald Trump is to serve. Those people are going to very targeted places. And you know who they're going to talk to? They're going to talk to white suburban Republican women. They're going to talk to white conservative Republican men with college educations. They're going to go in places just at the margins and just take away 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7% of the Republican vote away from him. You already have some people like the former lieutenant governor of Georgia who said, I'm voting for Joe Biden. You already see posters and billboards out saying, I can't vote for a convicted felon. These are the types of things that this group is going to do. They're going to be well funded and they're going to be targeted. And they're going to districts and states that are going to be vital to the outcome of this election. And circling back now, full circle to where we started, they're going to go after the 15% of Republicans that said Donald Trump should end his campaign because of this conviction. They're going to go to the 23% of GOP Republicans that do not believe the conviction was not driven by a motivation to damage Trump's political career. And they're going to go after those Republican-leaning independents, the 49% who believe that Trump should end his campaign because of this conviction. And that, in my opinion, ultimately is what's going to decide this election. I think ultimately that's how Joe Biden gets an increase in his turnout. They may get him close to the 2020 numbers. It's by peeling off these Republicans and going hard at these independents to make the gap 14% a few weeks ago even larger and wider, even as his own base within his party are having second thoughts about his candidacy. So that's what I think. Tell me what you think. I want you to subscribe and like and comment here. I want you to tell your friends about this. I want you to let everyone know about this channel. We're coming. We're talking real truth. We're taking both sides of the aisle and analyzing the things that happen throughout the day with data and research and polls. And we're not getting caught in the cocoon that is your algorithm, which keeps you balkanized on one side versus the ideology of another side. We're talking straight truth here that you don't hear anyplace else on mainstream media and any other platform that's trying to get your clicks and your likes. We do in depth here. We go wide and we go deep to tell you the truth about this election, politics in general, and various pieces of policy that you are interested in that govern your lives every day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay curious and remember, think. It ain't illegal yet.